I'll be presenting our work on the Shipping Faster indicator of the UK economic activity. And at ONS, we are developing several indicators of potentially large economic impacts based on novel data sources. And what the shipping indicator is an indicator that utilizes real-time data of vessel movements. So we're talking about GPS and also VHF radio to be able to produce useful insights about the economy. And also I'll give an overview of other interesting data science projects. And by the way, may I mention that during the presentation, you can go back and forth in the slide deck if you see something that you like or any link that you have missed. So yeah, but so first of all, I'm just going to talk briefly about the data science campus and what it is. So the modern economy has a challenge, and this is like of measuring fast evolving forms of economic activity. And we, as analysts and as policymakers, we need to have the opportunity to exploit these huge amounts of new data and information and produce useful insights. So this is why the data science campus was established, is to investigate all these new data sources and also to look at cutting edge data science techniques, talking about like machine learning, deep learning, and utilize this capability for the benefit of the UK. So we're using here a generation of tools and technologies. Just mentioning here that the campus doesn't only run projects, but we are also involved in training and mentoring, building the capability of civil service. And this is, we do a variety of projects, ranging from economic indicators, which is something that I'll be talking a bit more in the past, or when we're talking about more like innovative data sources like the traffic cameras. So we take footage from traffic cameras, and then we detect pedestrians and vehicles, and we can place these cameras in important areas, and then have an idea of how, let's say, how the products are being transferred, or if there are any problems in the traffic and things like that. And we also kind of like run NLP. So this traffic cameras involves a lot of computer vision, and we also have like projects like Pygrams, where what we do is like we look at very kind of like huge volumes of text data, like the project we had with the IPO, so the Intellectual Property Office, and we try to detect emergent terms from this data. So yeah, it's a lot of things that we do. Just mentioning the traffic cameras here because it is an exciting project. I mean, people were impressed that we were managed to kind of like create an indicator by just getting footage from cameras and then creating like a clever pipeline for the processing. And basically, we got this published. Even we had a journal paper out of it. So if you would like to look more into that, these are the links to that. A little bit about me and my background. So I joined the Data Science Campus and ONS 4 years ago. While at the campus, I've done projects on synthetic data, privacy, and I have a particular interest in economics. And in fact, I'm going to show you a project I've just finished on trade. Some of the work has been published, like in magazines. For example, the recent article I wrote on synthetic data was published on the Significance magazine. And before that, I was in academia. I have a PhD in activity recognition in video with machine learning. This is part of the work I was doing as a postdoc that was in collaboration with MOD and DSTL to look at to detect human behaviors from video. And I really like data science and machine learning, something that I really enjoy to do, and I've been doing since something like 2008. So my first project was around identifying white sharks individually by their fins using machine learning and computer vision, which is more on analyzing images and videos. And now let's talk a bit more about the economic indicators. So this is as you can see, for example, above is a quote by Professor Sir Charles Bean. So if we have to wait long for statistics, then they may be useless when we get them. So the Faster Indicators project is of the Office for National Statistics is an innovative response to the challenge of producing faster economic information. And the goals of the projects are to identify close to real-time big data and administrative database. So you saw the CPIC indicators. We have a database from HMRC, like trade in goods. And we select these databases so that they can represent useful economic concepts. And then, based on this data, we apply some machine learning or more traditional analysis to create a set of indicators that allow early identification of large economic changes. And what we're looking for is to provide an insight into economic activity at a level of timeliness and granularity not currently possible with official economic statistics. So just to give you an idea of what sort of economic of indicators we publish, this is something that it's not just from the campus, but it's from the entire ONS. So we have like total online job adverts, and you see like a time series to see how this works over time. I've got a snapshot from last week's indicator, so you can it's pretty recent, or something that we started at the campus looking at new reporters on VAT data. But also looking at things like potential redundancies and company incorporations. And then there is the link. So this information and these databases and these outputs are publicly available. So I have the link below. If anyone is interested, they can go there and look at the dashboards and download the data and play around with those. And one of the indicators that ONS publishes weekly is the faster shipping indicator. So what it does, it utilizes real-time data on vessel movements, which, as I said before, it's GPS technology and VHF radio signals, and basically to draw economic insights. So what the indicator does is it counts ship visits around major ports and also estimates time in port. And our data is available in close to real time. This is what the indicators look like. Mainly, we're interested in two indicators. So one is looking at the total ship visits around major UK ports, and obviously we do seasonal adjustments to get the final time series. But we also have another one dedicated at cargo and
Science Campus
tanker visits. And the latter is more relevant to global supply chain issues, for example, fuel issues. And now that you see these indicators, let me introduce you to some of the challenges with working with this data that I'm going to talk a bit about later. So, for example, at some point you see a dip in the time series. And let's say that the data, this data was not originally intended to be used for statistics production, so they come with caveats. And here, for example, is a result that somebody had the idea of changing platforms, and this resulted in changing data providers, and then our data had this nice dip that doesn't look that great. But I mean, this is part of working with new and challenging databases, and over time we are looking into rectifying issues like that. It's just a very good example. A few words about the impact of this work. So this work can be used to monitor international trade in goods movements and identify risks in global supply chains by looking at the time series. So for example, like if you see significantly fewer port visits over time, that might indicate a potential problem. I just want to mention also that several government organizations are interested in this indicator and always ask us about what is happening, and they want to get some insights on this data. And basically, with this sort of data, we can see if we look at the times, if we observe the time series of a long period of time, how COVID or EU exit affect ship movement. And this could be related again to economic activity. Or, for example, you can see events like the Suez Canal crisis. I mean, you would then expect to see something happening in your time series. So yeah, a lot of applications. I started explaining the challenges when I showed you the time series, but just to be a bit more specific here and say that we're talking about big data here. 11 million messages a day, and then it's not something that you can program using like R or Python. You need something which is more like cloud-based languages that have like a different logic, similar but a lot of different in how you allocate your resources and how you approach your big data, and the data are not in one point, so you can't just do iterations and things like that. It does take a long time to run consequently, and then when we try to kind of like run it, there is a competition among us to get resources, and that sometimes the platform just isn't available for a while. So yeah, and just saying again that this data was not originally intended for producing statistics. It was more around collision avoidance for the ships. This is why they were collecting it. But we can also utilize it for more fun things. And yeah, also like the data collection is done by third party, so we don't have any control over that. So if we see something that we cannot explain, we just have to ask the provider what is happening, and then this can take like a long time. A few words about what the processing pipeline involves. So you have the ship mover, the ships moving, and then they transmit this signal, and then this is like what you call like a AAS transceiver. And then what sort of information this signal includes? Basically, it's ship location, its speed, course, destination, and estimated arrival time. And then you also have information like ship ID and the size of the ship and dimensions in general. And also it does report automatically latitude and longitude. So that's all goes to a receiver on the other side, and then we have the UNGP that has built a cloud storage that and a platform that collects all this data. Once the data is in the cloud, this is where our work starts. So we try to collect the weekly data to produce our indicator, and we have a pipeline that looks like this. So first of all, I'm going to be talking a bit more about in a bit, but just briefly, we just tried to exclude non-moving ships. Then we're basically looking at which vessels are in what ports, and consequently estimate port visits. Then we do some seasonal adjustment, and after that, we are ready to produce an indicator which comes in the form of time series. I'm going to now talk a bit about the first part of the pipeline, which is the movement threshold. And I mentioned before that we don't want to take into account the ships that stay stationary within a port, because we just want to count visits. So therefore, but I mean, the reality of it is that some ships remain stationary during the reporting period, so that we don't want to count their presence in ports as port visits. So the filter we apply specifies that the ship should cover a certain distance in this reporting time to be considered as moving, and then this distance is 0.2 degrees longitude and 0.2 degrees latitude, which what it does, it defines this area, this rectangular area around the ship. So to be considered as moving, the vessel has to leave this box. And in that, with this method, we remove some vessels that are not they're not really engaged in port-to-port calls. Having filtered out the non-moving vessels, what we're looking then is to define port visits, because this is what we're really measuring. We're measuring port visits and then also like time spent in port. So first of all, we have to define port zones. How do we define a port? So we define port zones as rectangular bounding boxes centered at 16 larger at the 16 largest UK ports. And then port visits are defined when vessels enter a port zone. So this is the overall idea. And now we can discuss a bit about port shapes, which basically, again, brings us to the challenge of these techniques. We have used rectangular port shapes because it makes all calculations a lot easier. If we would use like a more complex polygon, then it would take more processing time. And given that we have like millions of data, it could make the processing time longer, which is something that we don't want. However, as you can see, this is like really doesn't represent the port zone very accurately, so that there is always the potential of false negatives. So we are improving on this idea by adopting precise polygons. And there are certain parties that have developed polygons that represent ports in the past, and we have access to some of the data. But sometimes this happens. We have every time. So all these shapes are defined manually, and we have to make sure that these shapes give us what they want. For example, here you can see a more complex ensemble of areas representing port visits that we found that was given to us by some colleagues in another organization. And what you can see here is that it doesn't really account of this visit. So we have to be very careful of what it does and test in all cases. And then we can look at refining these shapes using statistics, because we can basically look at heat maps to see where most of the ships, most of the vessels sit. And then we can also like apply clustering techniques to find centers and then estimate distances from centers. We can apply these statistics. And this is some of the development that we're currently doing to improve the indicator. Or the next idea would be basically a part of it to make sure that our methodology is robust to these imperfect port shapes. And then I'll talk about another interesting idea that we are investigating, which is the waiting zones around port. So not just port visits, because then we can look at things like waiting times around ports, which could be an indication of port stress. And also would like to see what would be the behavior of ships after specific waiting time. So like after like 3 or 4 or 5 hours of waiting times, what do the ships do? Do they stay, or do they travel to a different port, or how long would they stay? What would be the average waiting average time? And again, here it's a case that we have to define waiting zones. I mentioned earlier that the shipping indicators are really looking at events related to trade. One trick one caveat is that we don't know what's on the ship. It only reports ship location, and we can also look at the ship type. So this is a problem, because I mean, if we're looking at things like global supply chains and shortages in specific products, we wouldn't be able to kind of infer anything about these issues by just looking at the shipping data, at the AIS shipping data. I mean, there are, to be fair, ways of inferring what could be on the ship, but these are not that reliable. So what we're doing is that we are investigating other data sources. For example, we are trying to combine the shipping data that we receive with bills of lading data, which is a collection of shipping instructions that tell us what's on the ship. So if we combine the shipping instructions with the shipping data, this will give us a very good idea of which product is at which point in the sea. So that would be like a powerful database. But until we do that, because this is still work in progress, I just have to show you that that we basically are looking at different data sources as well. And we can use more conventional data sources. So this is a project we did in collaboration with DAT. And the idea here is to look at imports and look how these imports look at the values of these imports and see how these values change over time. So in this case, for example, you see a list of products, and basically you see what is the tariff utilization. From the tariff utilization, basically you can infer the savings that each firm could make for its year. And this is something that can give us that can help companies basically look into new trade agreements and also maximize the transaction profits, because we're also looking in which cases the firms do not utilize preferential tariffs. This is something that we published really recently, and this is to show you that we are looking at innovative data sources, but we are also looking at more conventional data sources like HMRC, trade in goods, or the interdepartmental business register, and that we are also try to tackle these problems in collaboration with other government departments. Here it is the Department for International Trade. So here in this talk, I presented the work we're doing at the Ioannis campus on the Shipping Faster indicator of UK economic activity. So basically, at the Office for National Statistics, we are developing several indicators of potentially large economic impacts based on novel data sources. And what the Shipping Faster indicator does is that it utilizes real-time data based on vessel movements. So think of it as GPS data and some sort of VHF radio data towards this effort. And this work can be utilized to monitor international trade in goods movements and identify risks in global supply chains. And as I mentioned, we have several government departments using or interested in the indicator. Here are the links to the work. So this is first of all the latest publication, and also like a blog which explains the full algorithms and technology behind the faster indicators, because behind the shipping faster indicators. Just keep in mind that this is something that we are currently improving. The original faster indicators, we had to develop the original indicators in about 3 months. So since then, we were just really we had more time once we got this up and running to improve on our results. And finally, I mentioned that we have several exciting projects at the data science campus, but we're also hiring. So we're hiring for data scientists and senior data scientists. This is a link if you or anyone of your colleagues are interested, and we're going to continue to hire over the next few months. So keep an eye for these advertisements. So yeah, that's me. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Oh, thanks so much, Ioannis. That's really, really interesting. It's been great to watch this work develop over the last few years, and there's bits I hadn't really quite appreciated about what has to go on in the background, about the sort of computational power that's needed to use these big data sets. We do have 10 minutes or so for questions. People can either raise their hand or put things in the chat. Does anyone want to start us off? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering, with the is it recorded when it enters the box, but then did you say it only counts once it leaves the box or something like that?
So well, it is recorded, yeah, when it enters the box. But I mean, there are some checks in place, because I mean, there is the possibility, for example, of double counts. Imagine there could be a vessel coming in and coming out. So we have filters to account for that.
Okay.
Well.
So Patrick.
Hi, Ioannis. Yeah, interesting talk. I was interested if you'd found any convenient ways to essentially validate the port visits that you're seeing. Is that easy or straightforward to do? How close do you think you are?
That's a very good question. So originally we were looking to do that by plotting the indicators against economic measures such as GVA. So this would give us an indication of if it makes sense or not. In terms of how we can validate the original data, that's really tricky, because it's third-party data. So the whole process is a black box for us. So we are only looking at more like a high-level data validation, which means comparing with relevant databases. That's what we do.
Yeah, no, I feel your pain with working with third-party data. Certainly, we have similar challenges. Yeah.
And just to say that it comes with every databases that we can just not directly go and ask. I mean, we had this experience working with HMRC data for the Reference Utilization Rates project, that every time that we had something, we could just ask directly HMRC. It's a bit more difficult here, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. There's a question in the chat, Ioannis, so you're able to see that one.
If you could read it, because it's
yeah, sure. No worries.
Yeah.
Presenter view makes it tricky. Okay, so have you used any pilot boarding records to validate and support the AIS data?
Not at the moment, but it's something that we are considering of doing in the future. Yeah.
That's great. Any others?
I
have one. It's a bit more. It's a little bit more of a philosophical question in a way. So we've seen, it's not that long since the ONS was using exclusively survey data, and the development of these sorts of technologies and indicators is quite recent. I mean, how far can this go? I mean, say for example, in 10, 20 years' time, what would you see the the impact of this sort of work on statistics?
Yeah, I think the traffic cameras that I showed you earlier is a very good example, because I mean we started with innovative data sources such as VAT, and then we went to GPS, and then we went to footage from traffic cameras, and then I mean traffic cameras these days, I mean they are placed like everywhere, so you can immediately see what is happening at the real time in supermarkets, what's the traffic out there, and also like have cameras placed in major stores. So there is huge potential. The only one of the major issues that I see in this case is like the data reliability that was mentioned before. But yeah, I mean, if we can find a very good way of validating data, which could be, for example, now we're talking with geographic data, with it could be around with working with other government departments that can host this data, so that we'll have more, that will be more confident to the source. So then we would have more reliable statistics as well, because I think one of the challenges is to go from experimental statistics to something that is close to officials, like more like reliable. That's what I think about that.
That's great. No, thank you. So any other questions? Sorry, Patrick, is that oh, Matthew?
There was something in the chat, I think, as well.
Oh, was it?
That came before.
Oh yes, so yeah, you're right. Are you able to identify ship origin, say Europe or outside Europe, to UK ports, or those moving within UK ports?
Yeah, we can identify that. So because I mean, first of all, in the data we have something like source, and I mean, if we're not sure, we can also look at trajectories. There is some work going on at this point, which basically extends that to non-UK visits and visits at other ports. So FCDO has also, who are actually one of our partners, have done that to look at traffic in Africa, to port visits in Africa. So basically, yeah, there is all this potential of doing that, looking at sources and destinations and things like that. It might be more tricky in some of the cases, given some of the challenges in the data. But it's definitely possible.
That's great.
I was therefore wondering if you could just weight it by the size of the ship.
Yeah, I would say that there is like a lot of work around inferring that. Are we talking about cargo, like predicting what?
Well, I think it's quite. I guess it's quite difficult to know get the actual volume of cargo on there, but you at least know the weight of the ship.
Yeah.
So you could just multiply by that.
Yeah, this is why I think. So what we're doing currently on that front is that we try to combine it with the bills of lading data, which is the shipping instructions that tells us exactly what's on the ship, to understand what products we have on the ship. I have to say again that what we're using at the moment is a third-party database again. So again, I think it's something that it's like a lesson learned for us, that we have to be very careful and validate our data and see how they behave over time before actually using them for statistics. But the route we've currently taken, I mean, we considered doing these inferences depending on weight, But I mean, yeah, it means that we would have to build like a rule-based system. I don't know how. I mean, given that we have all these different HS codes, it could be a hard task. Yeah, but I mean, again, we can use ship type information, like, you know, if it's the tankers, the cargo, and then use like a rule-based system. At this point, we're more trying to kind of like incorporate bills of lading. So we're going down this route, but we might return to this original idea about getting some information about weight if this exploration with bills of lading doesn't get us anywhere.
Got time for a couple more. I can see a couple of people typing in the chat. Oh, Patrick, while waiting for those ones to appear, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I'll jump in again. Something happened with your data June or July 2021 in the. Yeah. Did you say it was a change of data source or something?
Yeah, let me just go back. Let's go back to see the.
How did you handle that? Do you think you were inflated before that point, or you're missing stuff after that point?
No, okay, so
it's just a different set of ports or something.
So the ports were the same. Let me just bring it up. So are you talking? So I guess you're talking about this period, right, where you have a sort.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah, this was that one of the third-party algorithms was not very robust. So the way that the ship frequencies were gathered was different. And one of this was not so robust. So yeah, so sometimes it counted more, and sometimes it counted less. So as I said, we are improving on that, and in our new indicator, you don't see that dip anymore. But I mean, it's something that it will take us a while. So we have a deadline to finish all this improvement work. That's the end of June. But we can still see with what we have right now that this issue is rectified. But this is something that a lot of colleagues from trade have been inquiring about.
We have two more questions I think we can just about squeeze in. So the first is, compared to 2019, how were shipping indicators data affected in 2020 and 2021, and were these reflected in UK trade shipping statistics?
Yeah, so basically you can see what the indicator looks. This is what the outputs were. What we need to do is basically have some to basically relate it to something like GVA or GDP to see how close it is. So I don't have these measurements here. But if you go to the original blog, it gives you an idea of how an earlier version of it performed against GVA. But I mean, I don't have here is like I don't have a relationship to more like conventional economic statistics.
That's great, thank you. Actually, I think we've got two more. Sorry. So Josh asked, could shipping emissions for the UK be inferred from these levels of port activity?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's something that I don't look at the moment, but it's something that we could infer. I have to kind of like double check what sort of information we have from AIS, but I guess we can basically produce statistics like that. Yes. It is a possibility.
Last one. Sorry, this one I missed earlier. Have tidal range and times been accounted for in the density of vessels around ports, especially South Wales's massive tidal ranges?
Okay, so what we're doing in general is we're doing some sort of seasonal adjustment. So we are hoping that this sort of analysis would rectify problems like that. So we're looking at recurring patterns over time and then adjust the statistics.
So I think these are all deep water ports and probably operate in all tidal ranges. But that said, because I look after some of the seasonal adjustment side of this, So I mean, we haven't done anything to account for tidal range in there, but I suppose we could, but I don't expect we'd see anything. So
yeah, okay. So thanks, Matthew, because for us, I mean, we know that you're doing the seasonal adjustment, but it's a black box for us. Okay, so this is something that yeah, I think that was a very useful comment. Then it's something that we have to take into account in the future, I guess. Yeah, I thought that it was accounted there. Yeah, thanks for the correction.
That's great. I think that's about all we've got time for. We have overrun a bit, but it's always nice to overrun with questions, you know. So thanks so much, Ioannis, for taking the time to present, and also everyone coming along and contributing to the discussion. It's been really interesting to hear the questions and very thought-provoking. Hopefully, we'll form some contacts through this as well. And last but not least, just like to thank Dorothy, who's on the call, who's really basically made this event happen. So thanks, Dorothy, and I hope you all have a good weekend.